The diplomatic hall of Station Nexus buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from 17 different species maintained careful distances from the central table. At its head sat Queen Zephyra of the Kethmori Empire, her crystalline exoskeleton catching the artificial light like fractured starlight. Her 4 arms rested regally on the polished surface, each movement deliberate and predatory. The empty chair directly across from her seemed to mock every ambassador present. For 3 standard hours, they had all found excuses to avoid that seat. The Valorian delegate claimed his breathing apparatus required a specific atmospheric setting, only available at the far end. The insectoid hive speaker chittered about needing proximity to the ventilation systems. Even the normally bold Terran ambassador Harrison had chosen a seat 3 positions to the left, citing better acoustics for translation protocols. Everyone knew the truth. Queen Zephyra had personally executed the last being who dared sit across from her during negotiations. The holographic evidence was still fresh in galactic memory. The Proximan Trade Minister reduced to smoking particles in 0.3 seconds flat. James Chen adjusted his worn tool belt and surveyed the room with tired eyes. The human engineer had been called in to fix a malfunctioning gravity generator beneath the conference table, a routine maintenance job that somehow required his presence during active negotiations. He glanced at his tablet, noting the repair would take approximately 20 minutes. The parts were already laid out in his kit. "Mr. Chen," Ambassador Harrison's voice carried a warning tone, "perhaps you could return after the session concludes?" James looked up from his diagnostic scanner. Generators throwing microfluctuations could destabilize the entire station's gravity grid if it cascades. 20 minutes max. He walked toward the central table, tools in hand, seemingly oblivious to the collective intake of breath from every representative present. Queen Zephyra's compound eyes fixed on him with predatory interest, her mandibles clicking softly, a sound that had preceded countless executions. Without hesitation, James pulled out the chair directly across from the Kethmori Queen and sat down. The silence was deafening. Even the station's environmental systems seemed to pause, waiting for the inevitable disintegration beam, the flash of violence, the screams. Queen Zephyra's upper arms twitched toward her ceremonial weapon harnesses. James opened his toolkit and began working beneath the table, his movements efficient and practiced. "Excuse the disruption, Your Majesty. Faulty plasma coupling, won't be long." The Queen's 4 eyes studied him intently. Her translator unit processed his words, but her expression remained unreadable behind the insectoid features that had terrified civilizations for millennia. Minutes passed. James worked methodically, occasionally muttering to himself about typical Andromedian engineering shortcuts, and whoever installed this clearly skipped the manual. His casual complaints echoed in the vast chamber while seasoned diplomats held their breath. "You are not afraid," Queen Zephyra finally spoke, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated through the floor plating. James glanced up briefly. "Of faulty plasma couplings? Nah, seen worse." He returned to his work, magnetic wrench spinning efficiently, though whoever designed this junction clearly never had to maintain it. Classic oversight. The Queen's mandibles clicked again, but differently this time, curious rather than threatening. "You sit in the death seat. I sit where the access panel is," James replied, pulling out a corroded coupling and examining it critically. "Always work from the most efficient position, basic engineering principle." Liza Okafor watched from the observation deck above, her medical scanner forgotten, in her hands. As the station's chief xenobiologist, she had studied Kethmori behavioral patterns extensively. What she witnessed defied every predictive model in her database. Queen Zephyra was relaxing. The microtensions in her exoskeleton were decreasing. Her territorial display postures were shifting to neutral. Most remarkably, her pheromone emissions, barely detectable even to Liza's sensitive equipment, were changing from aggressive warnings to something approaching curiosity. "Your people conquered the Proximan Trade Federation," the Queen stated, watching James install the replacement coupling. "Wouldn't know about that. I fix things, not break them." James tested the connection, nodding with satisfaction. Though, between you and me, most problems start with poor maintenance schedules. Prevention beats destruction every time. The Queen leaned forward slightly. You do not seek to impress me with your species' military victories? James shrugged, packing his tools. Impressive enough that you're talking instead of shooting, I figure. He looked directly at her compound eyes without flinching. Besides, anyone can blow things up. Takes skill to make them work properly. He stood, shouldering his kit. Generator's stable now. Should run smooth for another 50,000 cycles, provided maintenance follows the recommended intervals. He paused. Which they won't, but that's job security for me. As James walked away, Queen Zephyra's voice stopped him. Human engineer, James Chen. He turned back. Yes, Your Majesty? When next I require consultation on infrastructure matters, I will request you specifically. James nodded professionally. Happy to help. Though next time, maybe schedule maintenance during off hours. Easier on everyone. The chamber remained silent until James disappeared through the service exit. Then, slowly, Queen Zephyra's attention turned to the other representatives. Shall we proceed with negotiations? She asked. Ambassador Harrison cleared his throat nervously. Of course, Your Majesty. The trade proposal for— I will hear the human proposals first, the Queen interrupted, her tone carrying new respect. A species that produces beings unafraid to sit across from death deserves priority consideration. From the observation deck, Liza smiled and made a note in her research log. Hypothesis confirmed. Sometimes the greatest diplomatic breakthrough comes not from trained ambassadors but from someone who simply shows up to do their job. Below, the negotiations continued, but everyone knew something fundamental had shifted. The human who dared to sit across from the alien queen had done more than fix a gravity generator. He had fixed first contact itself,